The 1980s were full of bright colors, wild fashion, and crazy experiments with products that promised the future. Some ideas looked great on paper, but when they hit the real world, they went down in flames. Stay tuned, because we're diving into 25 items from the 80s that totally failed. DeLorean DMC-12. This was supposed to be the car of the future. Its stainless steel body and gull-wing doors made it look like nothing else on the road. It even got eternal fame when it became the time machine in Back to the Future. But behind the flashy look, the car was slow, handled poorly, and was way too expensive at $25,000 in 1981. Add in company scandals and production problems, and only about 9,000 cars were ever built before the company went bankrupt. Vibrasonic Sauna. The Vibrasonic Sauna was an oversized relaxation pod that promised luxury and comfort. You'd lie in a capsule that heated up and vibrated while playing stereo music. It sounded like high-tech relaxation, but the price tag of $6,000 in the 1980s made it more expensive than many used cars. It was also the size of a phone booth, so it wasn't exactly something you could easily put in your house. Premier Cigarettes. Premier cigarettes were R.J. Reynolds' attempt at reinventing smoking. The company spent a shocking $300 million trying to launch this smokeless cigarette. Instead of burning tobacco in a normal way, you heated the tip, which gave off a strange taste and smell. Smokers complained that it tasted like burning plastic and didn't give them the experience they wanted. People who smoked wanted real cigarettes, not an experiment that barely worked. The speaker vest. The vest tried to mix fashion and music. It looked like a tough biker vest, but had built-in speakers so you could blast your tunes on the go. On paper, it sounded like a dream for road trips. But once you put it on, wind noise made it impossible to enjoy the music, and people around you had to hear your playlist whether they liked it or not. It wasn't practical at all, and once portable headphones became better, nobody wanted a noisy jacket. Ital Design Capsula. This was an idea that sounded way ahead of its time. The car was supposed to transform between different styles, like a van or a sports car, depending on your needs. The problem was the technology just wasn't ready in the 1980s. Building a modular car was far too expensive, and the design looked too strange for most people to take seriously. It became a cool concept, but never something the average driver could actually buy or use. Electric doormat. The electric doormat was another invention that didn't need to exist. Instead of wiping your shoes on a normal mat, this one had little motorized brushes that spun to clean your shoes automatically. The problem was it cost far too much, broke easily, and people realized a regular mat did the same job without needing repairs. It was a perfect case of over-engineering something that didn't need to be complicated at all. Ulticard. This was an ambitious idea. This was marketed as the everything card. It combined a credit card, a calculator, your medical records, and even a calorie tracker all in one. It sounded futuristic, but in reality, it was clunky, hard to use, and relied on technology that wasn't advanced enough yet. People didn't trust it with sensitive information, and the public simply wasn't ready. Briefcase alarm. The alarm was straight out of a spy movie. If someone tried to steal your briefcase, it would trigger a siren and release red smoke. It was meant to protect your documents and scare off thieves. The reality was much worse. It often went off by accident, ruining paperwork with smoke and getting owners in trouble in public. Nobody wanted to deal with lawsuits or embarrassment, so this wild idea disappeared almost as fast as it arrived. Do-it-all system. This system was one of those gadgets that tried to combine everything. It was an AM/FM radio, a cassette player, a calculator, and a clock, all packed into one device. The problem was it didn't do any of those things well. The sound quality was poor, the cassette player used tiny microcassettes that quickly fell out of fashion, and the calculator was basic. Dome homes. Dome homes were pitched as futuristic living spaces. They looked like giant igloos with energy-efficient designs and modern features. But when people actually saw them, they just seemed too strange. Banks didn't want to give loans for homes that looked this odd, and homeowners didn't want to risk living in something that didn't fit into normal neighborhoods. Private eye headset. This headset was like a wearable TV monitor in 1982. You strapped it onto your head and watched a tiny screen right in front of your eye. The price was $500, which was very expensive back then. The problem was the screen made people dizzy and caused headaches. It also didn't have much content or any useful applications. Decades later, tech like Google Glass tried again with more success, but in the early 80s, this was way too much for people to handle. CX77 Touch Tablet. Atari tried to get creative with the CX77 Touch Tablet. It let you draw pictures directly onto your TV screen, kind of like an early iPad, but it had no way to save your artwork, and the controls were clunky. By the time it launched, Atari's reputation was collapsing thanks to the video game crash, so few people trusted them. Kodak disc film. The film was another futuristic-looking product that turned out to be a disaster. Instead of using regular film, the company created small disc-shaped negatives that were supposed to make cameras more compact. The problem was the negatives were tiny, so photos came out grainy and blurry. Families spent money thinking they were getting better cameras, only to be disappointed when the prints looked awful. Fisher-Price PXL 2000. This looked like a toy camcorder for kids, but it was actually a real video camera that recorded onto audio cassette tapes. It cost around $180, which was a lot for families in the 80s. The videos it produced were in black and white, and the quality looked like static. Parents didn't see the value when they could spend the same money on a Nintendo system that kids actually wanted. Seiko TV watch. The watch was a wristwatch with a 1-inch TV screen. It cost $495, which was a big investment back then. The catch was, you couldn't just watch TV directly on it, you had to connect it to a separate tuner box with wires. Wearing the watch with cables running to your pocket wasn't exactly cool. It was an amazing piece of tech for its time, but way too impractical for everyday life. New Coke. New Coke became one of the most infamous product disasters in history. Coca-Cola decided to change its classic formula to compete with Pepsi, launching what they called a smoother, sweeter Coke. Instead of excitement, it sparked outrage. Fans hated the new taste and flooded the company with complaints. Within 79 days, Coca-Cola had to bring back the original formula under the name Coca-Cola Classic. Diet Pepsi AM. Diet Pepsi AM was another drink failure. The company thought they could market soda as a breakfast drink by adding extra caffeine. They imagined people drinking Pepsi in the morning instead of coffee. The reality was nobody wanted to pop open a soda can at 7 a.m. Coffee remained the king of breakfast drinks, and Diet Pepsi AM vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Apple Newton. This was one of Apple's boldest but most embarrassing missteps. Marketed in the early 90s but developed during the 80s, it was supposed to be the first real personal digital assistant. It cost around $700, which was a lot of money at the time, and came with handwriting recognition that barely worked. People would write something simple like lunch at 2, and Newton might read it as launch a zoo. It was also bulky and drained batteries quickly. The idea of a pocket computer was brilliant, but the technology just wasn't ready. Years later, devices like the iPhone proved that the concept had potential, just not in 1988. Cabbage Patch Dolls. At first, Cabbage Patch Dolls were a runaway success. Each doll came with its own adoption papers and a unique name, which made kids feel like they had something truly special. Stores couldn't keep up with demand, and by Christmas in the mid-80s, parents were lining up and even rioting just to get their hands on one. But after the craze died down, the magic disappeared. Once the initial hype faded, kids moved on and shelves were left full of dolls nobody cared about anymore. The fad burned bright, but like most fads, it collapsed almost overnight. Ford Edsel. The original Ford Edsel from the 1950s was one of the most famous car flops ever, and for some reason, the company decided to bring it back in the 1980s. The idea was to rebrand it as a smaller, fuel-efficient car for a new generation, but the name Edsel had already become a joke in car culture, and people had no interest in buying a product tied to such a failure. The revival attempt never caught on, and Ford quickly realized some names should just stay buried. Sony BetaMovie Camcorder. Sony's BetaMovie Camcorder was supposed to give people a new way to record memories. It was the first all-in-one camcorder that didn't require carrying a separate recorder. The catch was it only worked with Betamax tapes, and by the mid-80s, Betamax was already losing badly to VHS. To make matters worse, the camera couldn't even play back recordings unless you had a separate Betamax player at home. With a high price tag and a losing format, the BetaMovie was doomed. RCA capacitance electronic disc. The RCA CED was another strange invention that seemed futuristic but quickly fell flat. It looked like a vinyl record but held movies instead of music. You slid the disc inside a big plastic case into a special player and it would play a film. The problem was the discs scratched easily, you couldn't record on them, and the quality wasn't better than VHS. RCA had spent years developing the system, only to release it at the exact moment VHS was taking over. By the time it hit stores in 1981, the market had already decided, and CED players ended up as forgotten furniture in living rooms. IBM PCGR. IBM wanted to enter the home computer market with the PCGR, hoping to give families an affordable version of their successful business machines, but the keyboard was terrible, with rubbery keys compared to Chiclet's candy. On top of that, it was overpriced, costing more than $600, while cheaper and better machines were already out there. The PCGR also had almost no compatible software, making it a computer that couldn't actually do much. Colgate frozen lasagna. Colgate made one of the strangest branding decisions of the decade when it tried to sell frozen lasagna. The company was known worldwide for toothpaste and mouthwash, not food. So when people saw Colgate lasagna in the freezer aisle, the immediate thought was toothpaste-flavored pasta. The food itself wasn't bad, but the branding was a complete disaster. Nobody wanted to eat a meal that reminded them of brushing their teeth. Sinclair C5. The Sinclair C5 was pitched as a cheap, eco-friendly electric vehicle designed for city commuting. It looked like a little plastic go-kart with pedals, a motor, and a top speed of only 15 miles per hour. It cost about $389 in 1985, but the problems were endless. There was no weather protection, so rain made it miserable. Cars on the road towered over it, making it dangerous, and most people just laughed when they saw one. It wasn't practical, it wasn't fast, and it wasn't safe. If you had fun with this, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite fail, and stick around because there are plenty more crazy stories where this came from.